All right, we're back again. This would be episode 3, right?
3.
Awesome. So what are we talking about this week, Ben?
Wine.
Santé.
Santé.
And what are you drinking? Looks very dark and very...
I am drinking a Zinfandel.
Ooh, very nice. I have a wine spritzer. I spritzed my wine. Make it fancy. And all that.
Yeah, very nice.
All that means is you add some like soda water and some citrus to it. So just kind of, if you get the La Croix out, there's like an infinite flavor combination.
That is true. I'm not a very big wine drinker. Well, I'm 6'5", so I'm a big wine drinker. But one of my favorite things about wine is I'm in San Francisco, and it's very close to the Napa Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And I love going to the winery.
Yeah.
Not so much to drink. Maybe I'll have some tastings, but the grounds are gorgeous. The art galleries are gorgeous. And a lot of the nearby food is absolutely
fantastic.
But going out to the wineries, absolutely time well.
I feel like the wineries are the standard by which other alcohol producers are trying to kind of measure up to, like new breweries. There here in Virginia, there are cideries, and distilleries. They're trying to make this experience. I think that comes from a lot of the winery experiences.
I think wineries kind of comes with this expectation of like fresh made bread and nice cheeses and nice like, rich meats and everything. At least that's what we have here. I'm a big sucker for olives.
Yes,
olives there are wineries with fields of grapes up there, but there's also people who grow olives.
I'm a sucker for an olive too. I will say I also enjoy a trip to the winery for all of those reasons, and again because I'm such a nerd. So like if I can get a tour and just pepper that poor person with questions.
I'm a nerdy person. I want to know things.
Yeah, like tell me all the things.
Yeah, we drink and we know things. We have to make that true.
Yes, exactly. And I do, again, we talked about this, our previous episode, just this appreciation for the artisans, for people who really have devoted their life to a particular craft. And I think that their enthusiasm is contagious.
Oh, yeah. A lot of these things, a lot of wineries rather, they're passed down through families.
Yeah.
And so it is a great sense of pride. Like dad did it this way because grandpa did it this way because great grandpa did it this way.
Yeah.
And there are some wineries that are new and they're very good, but there are some wineries that are old and they've been doing something that others haven't been doing for generations. And there's a special, it comes out in the final product.
Of course. Yeah, for sure. So you said you were not a huge wine drinker. Do you have a favorite type, a favorite varietal, if you will?
I do drink wine on occasion. I'm Jewish, so traditionally there's wine for everything. Every Friday night, wine. Every celebration, wine. Every holiday, even the depressing ones, wine. But I think one of my favorite things about wine is that there are so many different pairings. Different foods and different occasions. And just this weekend, as a matter of fact, I went with a bunch of friends and we made some of the most beautiful big steaks you can imagine. We had a chef with us. He just happens to be English. We made some really good steaks. Then we had a nice dark red wine to go with it. And it adds absolutely something to, I don't want to sound too food snobby, but it's the truth. You have a delicious steak and it's made just right. And you have just the right seasoning on it, and then you have a Merlot, which is what we have, and it just adds a whole nother level to it. Eating the steak is one thing, but then when you have a sip of wine, it's like you're finishing taking the bite of the steak, and it just works. And that's what I like, a darker red.
Yeah.
How about you?
I am predominantly a white wine drinker. Red wine tends to give me headaches, so I sort of confine my red wine consumption to if I'm having a steak or something like that. Go with it, because I agree that pairing is really good. And I gravitate towards most of my alcohol, I gravitate towards away from the sweet into the very dry, citrusy. Dimos and I have spent some time in Greece, so the Greek wines are really interesting. They're very minerally because of the volcanic soil there. There was a varietal we tried this summer that had like a salty aftertaste because the vineyards were near the ocean. So I'm not no Chardonnay. Unless it's steel aged. But yeah, that's kind of usually my palate in the Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Grigio, kind of.
There's so many.
Sirtico is the Greek, and Malagusia are two of the Greek varietals. I mean, there's so many of them, like you said, and a lot of them are very specifically regional. So, yeah, I think if you only consume wines that you can buy here in the US, that can be limiting in and of itself. So, where'd it come from? Load us up with some history.
That's it, with some history.
Yeah.
I was actually kind of stunned about this one, and I thought when I would find out when was the first wine made, I'm thinking surely something as simple as wine, fermented grape juice, it's got to be the oldest alcohol there is. But no, we did beer a couple episodes back, and that's the oldest. There's actually a little more to the actual, more steps and more science that goes to making wine than there is beer. And the first evidence that there is of wine being made goes to 9000 BCE in what is now modern day China. And there's a little close, it's still not as old as beer. And then there's further evidence of Mesopotamian wine going back 5000 BCE. That's where the first winemaking comes from. There's some evidence further between 6,000 to 8,000 BCE in the South Caucasus region of now Georgia, Armenia, and Iran. They also started making wine there as well. Yeah, when I was reading, wine was actually might have been stumbled upon when people were carrying clumsily or stacking lots of grapes in the field, and they left a few of them in smush conditions in the container. They just started to kind of clean up on their own, and they realized this weird liquid that they're making has some other effects and flavors, and I guess it matured from there.
Yeah, I have some Georgian friends who extol the virtues of Georgian wine all the time. I've heard it's extremely good. And same thing, we have some Romanian friends that were, basically like, we don't even drink other wine, we import it from Romania.
We drink the original ancient wine.
I mean, that can be a little risky, I guess, too. In Greece, there's a wine called Retsina, and it's a white wine. And it is extremely distinctive because in ancient Greek, wine was stored in amphorae, which are clay. And clay is porous. So some of the wine would seep into the clay. So to prevent that from happening and to help preserve the wine, they would line the amphorae with pine resin, kind of a natural antibiotic, and also a sealant. And the wine would take on that flavor. So Retsina to this day has a piney flavor to it. Wow. So it's an extremely acquired taste. Wow. And there's a whole lot of variation about how piney the wine is. And but I think it's just fascinating. So it is an ancient way of making wine. But again, if you're not expecting it, the flavor is really different.
I've tasted that in a few different spirits and alcohols, that they have this really kind of foresty, strong hit to it, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
It helps if someone knows and tells you in advance. Otherwise, you think you're absolutely drinking the wrong thing.
You're like, what is this? I think it goes really well with Greek food on a hot summer day on an island, but that could also be the atmosphere too.
Okay. I have a bottle of something called aquavit. I've never opened it. I have no idea what's in it, what to expect. I'm just kind of
I think it's aquavit, one of the anise flavored ones. Somehow I want to say it is. It's a Norse of some like Norway, Sweden kind of.
It does sound like an IKEA item.
There you go. Well, I think we have an episode on liqueurs coming up, so we can run through the vast gamut that is.
Liqueur? Okay, done.
I don't know if it would classify, actually. I think liqueurs have to be a little sweet and like fruit based. See, I don't know. This is why we're doing these, because
you're listening to us drink, but also learn. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So I came across some really interesting facts about grapes. It was really hard for me to kind of whittle down what I want to talk about. There's so much that goes into wine, and there's so much science around winemaking.
Insane. It is insane.
So I had to really try to be like, okay, what are kind of interesting facts? Fact number one, grapes are berries. And botanically, I didn't realize this. I didn't know the definition of a berry botanically, but it's a fruit without a stone that's produced from a single flower containing one ovary of the plant. Other berries, tomatoes, cucumbers, eggplants, bananas, but not actually strawberries or raspberries. Those are not botanically classified as berries. Yeah. My little head exploded. I was like, what? Grapes have existed for a really long time, like 65 million years. Not the grapes as we know them, but a variety of grape. And humans then started cultivating them at a certain point, probably in Eastern Europe or in the Middle East, like you said, Samaria, the Baltics. Most domesticated grapes come from the Vitis vinifera, which is a grapevine native to the Mediterranean and Central Asia. So most of them kind of come from this root stock of grape, which I thought was kind of interesting. Grapes, berries, who know?
They're very old. Grapes have been around.
They've been around. Yeah. And
I like how things that don't have the word berry in the title. Berries. Things that have berries in the title.
Not a berry. No. This is what happens when you have scientists classify things as opposed to like normal people classifying things. All these things all kind of look the same and you can pick them. Berry. Awesome. Scientists like, no, sorry.
We're going to name it and leave it. You deal.
Yeah, exactly. Grapes are part of it. The terroir is another big part. Terroir. Do we know what terroir is? A good French word, and I'm butchering.
I have the word somewhere. Nope. Remind me, because I have very long notes.
It's a complete natural environment in which particularly wine is produced, including factors such as the soil, topography, and climate. And it's important because it imparts a particular flavor to the wine. So you could have this,
like you mentioned, wines that bring up the kind of saltiness from the sea. Mm-hmm. Exactly that type of thing. There are people who make wine. They sample the soil first before they decide this is what we're going to make our wine. Even the soil is going to provide a very good crop of grapes. They might not have certain minerals and other things in the ground that they want to bring out into the grapes. It's amazing.
It is.
Something in the soil can transfer through the growing plant into a grape, processed into wine, and then you can taste it.
I know.
It's stunning.
Yeah, it really is. And it's so interesting because the same varietal, like a Pinot Noir grape, will taste different if it's planted in different terroirs. And this is why the French wine appellation system, the appel is I am called, so je m'appelle, I am called, right? So it's a system of naming in French wines is based on the terroir. So it's the reason that you can only call champagne if it comes from that region of France, right? Otherwise, it's just sparkling snobbery. But but it is interesting because that wine I told you about that was salty, that comes from a particular area in Greece, and the varietal's only grown there. And so the guy was saying you have to look at the bottle. If it says this, if it says Marcopolo, then it's this varietal. If it says this larger region of Greece, Attica, then it's a mix of other grapes. So it is a way for people who want to try to pick out wines for you to start thinking about what might be a blend, what might be a single varietal, those sorts of things. Or you can do what I do and just pick out the pretty bottle.
Yeah, always. The pretty bottle.
Always.
You've covered that before. It applies to everything. It's sciencey and pretty. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Something I found interesting about wine is the differences in preparation between red wines and white wines. Mm-hmm. I learned that for red wines, they get the red or black grapes, the dark colored grape, and they include the skins, they include the seeds, if any, they include some of the stalk that hold the seeds in the extraction process when they smash it all up to get the juices for the wine. But for the white wine, they use the light green or yellowish grape, and they don't include anything. No skins, no seeds, no nothing. They squish out the meat of the grapes, just the juice, and they keep it much more pure. Mm-hmm. And that gives you the lighter, more fresher tastes, I guess you could say.
Well, it also greatly impacts the chemical composition of the wines.
Yes. More tannins by far in the reds. Which also leads to why you can age red wines and you can't really age a white wine, right? There are two different ways that aromas can arise in a wine. And there are what are called secondary wine aromas that come primarily from the fermentation process. And those are esters, which is a particular chemical compound. When I hear esters, I always think bananas because in my biochem lab, we made esters and they smelled like bananas. So I just thought it's like in my head. That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, you can make other esters smell like other things. We happen to do bananas. These esters are the things that give a white wine its fruity, younger kind of flavor, but they're unstable at the pH of the wine. And so they hydrolyze or they break down faster, yielding like less potent aromas and flavors. And so keeping a white wine longer isn't going to make it better necessarily, with the exception of a couple of different varietals that have what are called varietal aromas. And these are aromas that come from the grape itself. Like they're sort of innate in the grape juice as opposed to something that rises as a product of the fermentation. So those will last, and those will slowly transform with oxidation. So oxygen dissolved in the wine will cause the breakdown of these, but that's why you add sulfur. One of the reasons you add sulfur, aside from like you don't want any bacteria, is because it'll slow down this oxidation. And also if you're keeping your wine at a certain pH, will slow it down too. What was super interesting, I found this one experiment where they took a Riesling, which is a wine that you can age, not as long as the red, but you can age it a little bit, a white wine. And they stored it at different temperatures to see, like everyone knows, have your wine cellar, right? But like, is there really anything to that? And it turns out, yeah. So storage temperature was the main factor in affecting the transformations of these varietal aromas, these core aromas to an aging wine. And so the cooler the storage, the better. It kind of slows the whole process down a little bit. So it is actually good to store your wines below room temperature if you want them to age well.
Okay.
Yeah.
A little cooler. Sure.
Yeah. That much of connoisseurs where we have bottles that we want to keep for 5 or 10 years. But if you do have those, you should keep them in a cooler place.
And we have here dozens and dozens of bottles of wine. Somehow we acquire them faster than we drink them, which is very rare that we have a drink.
Yeah.
So we're piling up quite nicely. But we do try to keep them in the less accessible parts of the house where it's a little bit cooler.
Yeah.
Again, not the smartest as far as wine connoisseur goes, but we're trying to keep them out of harm's way.
Mm-hmm.
And keep them still.
Yeah. I mean, I think especially with kids, keeping them out of harm's way, breakable bottles and whatnot.
We have wine in a proper wine rack over the bar in our living room.
Yeah.
We have wine in various little cabinets and bookshelves because we have so much wine. And we have this one little thing in our living room. It's this nice little metal, heavy little display piece for the living room that has places for you to put wine. So it's there on the floor.
Yeah.
And you trip over it.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know where else to put it. So we put it in the way.
Our landlord is Italian, and so we have a wine fridge in our apartment. And I don't know that I would purposely get one, but it is nice, mostly because it keeps our sparkling waters cold.
It's called the wine fridge. You don't have to put wine in it.
There's like two bottles maybe in there. Chill your wines or keep them cool if you don't want them to age. And there are not every wine, even reds, not every varietal should be aged forever. Mm-hmm. There are limits to the aging of the wines.
Yes,
that it becomes vinegar. No. If you let it go, it just becomes vinegar. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. It's eating away at itself. So, yeah.
But going back to the terroir, so we talked about how it's the soil and it's the climate and it's the topography and it's also the microbes. Because if there is anything to do with small little things, I will find it because I'm fascinated by them.
And I love hearing it.
So a study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science used what's called ribosomal RNA sequencing to look at the abundance of bacteria and fungi on the grapes in 8 vineyards from 4 major wine growing regions in California. So ribosomal RNA, or rRNA, is the non-coding RNA that is the primary component of the ribosome, which is the organelle that translates messenger RNA into proteins. So mRNA is messenger RNA. There's several different types of RNA in your body. There's tRNA, rRNA, mRNA. So messenger RNA is what gets made off of your DNA, and then the ribosome sits literally on top of it and just kind of chugs its way like a little train across the RNA to make the codons that then become the proteins, right? So this ribosomal RNA is very conserved, and so most species of bacteria and fungi have it because it is the way that you replicate. You can use this and sequence it in soil samples to look up the abundance of the life. Because if you take a soil sample and you culture it, you're only going to get the bacteria and the fungi that like that particular culture condition. And you're not going to get any of the anaerobic, the ones that can't breathe oxygen species. But if you do the sequencing, you get a much broader look. And so they showed that in the different wine growing regions have different microbial communities that fluctuate based on the varietal of the wine planted there and the year of the production of the plant. So it's highly specific. So they're thinking that these little microbiomes, so to speak, of the grapes also influence the flavor, and why it might be part of the reason why you see a year-to-year fluctuation in the flavor of a wine, even in the same varietal. I love microorganisms. They're so cool.
The smallest little thing.
Little teeny thing, big, huge impact.
I went to a presentation. Someone from NASA was using satellites to see what plankton is where in the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And you think about how big a satellite is, how far away it is up in space. How can they see the plankton? Well, they can't, but they can see the environment that the plankton has created around itself. So goodness knows how many billions of plankton. They turn this large swath of ocean, this color, they change the chemical composition of that part of the ocean to whatever it is. And that is what's detectable by the sunlight in space. And it's amazing. One little itty bitty thing.
Mm-hmm.
But multiplied by countless millions and millions and millions, it makes a huge difference in something as big as the ocean or
and the search for life in space is largely the search for bacteria, because that's most likely what you would find first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if there's evidence of the building blocks of life, it's usually the evidence of things that bacteria can use to grow. And if you look at they're called the extremophiles, so like the bacteria that live in Old Faithful and Yellowstone, the ones that live in really extreme conditions, then those are sort of models of what you could find on other planets.
Yeah, there are places all over Earth where
there should be no life.
Everyone is certain nothing's going to live here. Nothing. And then there's some little bacteria or something.
It's like
hydrothermal vents into the ocean or...
Yeah, they're just like, I love it here. I will eat all the nitrogen and...
So happy. This is the best. There's no light. There's no nothing. Just this weird noxious stuff coming up from the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's really cool. So what else did you think was interesting about wine?
A few things I found interesting about wine, and not just the difference between the red and white grape and how differently they're aged, but something I found funny, very funny actually, was pros and cons of boxed wine. Boxed wine has this incredible bad perception of being the absolute worst wine there is. But in most cases, it's not true. It's actually just boxed for the convenience of it. For some wines that you don't want to age and you want to drink because it's a fresher wine, and getting boxed wine is the perfect medium to transfer your wine. You're getting a lot of it. It's eco-friendly. You get more value for it.
Mm-hmm.
If your intention is to serve it soon for a lot of guests, or if you just want to pick them up. Box wine isn't that bad, actually. It's made by some of the biggest names in wine, and they put some of their best work into it. If you'd like to have a bottle, you can buy a bottle. But if you'd like more, getting box wine is actually quite good. And there's even a great variety of them. So you can pick and choose what style wine you like. It doesn't look very nice, maybe. Aesthetically, it's not pleasing, maybe, but I was surprised to find. I thought box wine's got to be the cheapest grape juice, but no, it's actually the regular good wine that everyone drinks out of a bottle.
Yeah, and I think also the canned wines. Like, it's nice to not have to open a whole bottle, right? If you don't want that. I mean, you can recork and save, but that only lasts for so long. It's nice to have the option to not drink a ton. I remember in COVID, I don't remember which wine it was, but it was a red wine. It was a box of red wine and a big box of Cheez-Its, and they put them together and you buy them as a set. It was like the COVID special. I know, right? By the way, well, we could talk about this in the champagne episode, but champagne and goldfish, great pairing. Great pairing.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't see that coming at all.
Either did I, but COVID. Yeah. And I have one more funny story. It's not even my story, but it's a funny story about box wine. So some box wine does deserve its reputation, right?
Absolutely.
And my brother in college, they did a tour de Franzia where they had the different Franzia box wines around the backyard of someone's house instead of the Tour de France. I don't think it ended well. No, it doesn't sound good to me.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah. But speaking of wine serving, we have another study about glass size and how much you drink.
Right.
And this one might surprise you. So this was published in 2017 in the British Medical something, BMC Psychology. I don't know what BMC stands for. So 166 young women, and I do take umbrage that it was only women in this study, but still, were randomized to drink a 175 milliliter portion of wine from either a small 250 milliliter glass or a large 370 milliliter glass. And they were looking at three they call them micro drinking behaviors as a result of the glass size. And they did it by video. And so they're looking at the drinking rate, the sip number, and the sip duration. And antithetically, wine drunk from a larger glass was consumed more slowly and with a shorter sip duration than the small glass.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Along the glasses thing, which we're going to look next, is red wines are served in a larger, rounder, wider glass. Mm-hmm. And white wines are served in narrower glass. And it all comes to aeration. Mm-hmm. If you have a red wine, you put in a larger glass, it helps bring out the flavor more naturally because you're exposing more surface area to the air. And that's why there's also a lot more swirling around. Mm-hmm. With the red wine, kind of let it slosh around a little bit, let it release a few things to the air, and let it bring out its perfume and its flavor a little bit better. For white wines, the glasses are normally much narrower because you're trying to reduce that surface area. There's not a lot of swirling going around with narrow glasses because you're trying to keep that crisp flavor and aroma in the white wines. I found that actually quite interesting. I knew that there were different wine glasses that you're served at a very fancy restaurant or fancy meal, and I knew the bigger ones were red, but not why.
Yeah, and you are supposed to hold a wine glass by the stem so that your body heat does not warm up the wine and change the flavor.
Mm-hmm. The pinkies out thing is probably out.
Yeah, that's probably optional, yeah. I'm going to keep pinkies in because I'm a bit of a klutz, and so I need like all hands on deck when I'm holding something like a wine glass.
I had to be taught to not hold it like this with a fist. I had to learn to be a little more sophisticated.
Yeah, I actually have
We're not watching. I actually gripped the entire stem with a fist. I used to do that because I just thought that's how you did it. That was incorrect. Hold it with your fingertips.
Yes,
because this, it looked like a mongrel. But also, the hand is more manageable.
Yeah. I'm currently drinking out of a stemless wine glass, which has its own, risks. But for me, probably a little bit safer, less likely to drop it, which does not correlate with how many drinks I've had. I do not get klutzier. I just am consistently klutzy. It's a flat line. All right. So what else did you find fascinating about wines?
The whole people who really, really, really enjoy wine, they take their wine drinking seriously. There are several steps to how you're supposed to enjoy the wine. First thing, you swirl it around. We just mentioned to get the aroma and aeration going. And then people bury their noses into the glass to really smell the wine. And then they take a taste, and there's a whole swishing around in your mouth. And you're supposed to get every bit of your tongue and your cheek coated in the wine, under your tongue, over your tongue, on either side of your gums. And really just let it sit there and then don't move for a brief moment. And try to focus on all the different flavors that are going to come in from different parts of your mouth. That part blew me away. That's not something I am attuned to. But
either.
There are some people who, there's a whole industry, people who just, for them, I guess you could say, white wine is like appreciating a piece of wine, and that's how you do it. It's some people I know, good friends of mine, like to make fun of people who do that with their wines.
Yeah.
I just find it absolutely fascinating that someone will take the time. Mm-hmm. By the time you're done with your glass of wine, they're still in the middle of enjoying it. So who's the smart person?
I do not have a fantastic palate. I know what wines I like and which ones I don't, but I often can't taste the flavors that are in the tasting notes. Maybe if we amass an audience, we can do a sort of watch together. I don't know if you've watched the documentary about sommeliers that are trying to pass the master sommelier course. Sommelier.
Okay.
Yeah. It's fascinating. It's a little tongue-in-cheek, some of it, because I think there's also, I have no doubt that people are going to actually taste these things, but most people can't, I don't think. really discern like really subtle notes of flavor in the different wines and kind of say, this is definitely from this region or that region. It's interesting to see people who can.
Have you seen the John Wick movies?
Sideways? Is that the one you're
No.
thinking? Yeah. Oh, the John Wick. I think I've seen part of one of them.
There's a great scene in which John Wick goes and sees a sommelier.
Yeah.
And he asks for things that are heavy and that are rich. He asks for things that are crisp, that are more desserty. And the sommelier gives him weapons that match those types of descriptions. But the whole process is very proper, very precise. And the sommelier is even wearing that, wine symphony necklace medallion thing that they do. It's fantastically funny.
That is fun. I think I have gone through all of my fun facts. Do you have any additional fun facts that we have not covered yet?
I think I am good on my facts about wine.
Nice.
I covered a lot of it.
All right. Well, that was a historical, pop cultural, scientific romp through wine. As we say, alcohol brings everything together.
Alcohol brings everything together.
So cheers to that.
Cheers. And my little glass of wine.
Yeah, while you do that, remind our listeners to drink responsibly. Drink Please like do. Your liver is watching you, because it is, and also processing all of that alcohol. So be kind to it. It's working hard.
Be kind to your liver. Entertain your liver, but kind to it.
Give it some breaks.
And please drink responsibly.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Yay.
Cheers. Thanks for listening for wine.